the Oval Office with the German Chancellor, and a lot to get to here. But the most interesting and perhaps important issue, political issue and policy issue, is what President Trump said about his now former friend, at least it seems, Elon Musk.
To the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, June 8th, 2025. And Val Atkinson is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed. Present.
Yep. You know what? We haven't been around for a while. And the reason why we haven't been around is because we've been building a new studio and a new setup, and we got a whole bunch of new things coming. We've been threatening this for, I think, Val, since the pandemic, right? And we said that we were trying to create a media group that was free from all the encumbrances of the corporate people and that kind of thing. And one of the things that we wanted to do is build a situation where we could talk freely, because we knew that particularly if Kamala had lost, that Donald Trump said he wanted to be a dictator. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That's what he said. He said he wanted to be a dictator, and dictators cause problems, and we're having some problems now. I think if you're under a rock, then you'd be the only person to realize that there wasn't a major flare-up in the White House, and we'll talk about that. I think that's what everybody's been talking about, is the guy with the car company fighting the guy that used to be the reality TV host. But Val, I want to start somewhere else. I want to start at what kind of problem are we really in now? We kept saying that there was a possibility that we devolve into fascism and anti-democratic things. So can you tell me, Val, where we are in where we are in terms of where we are with Donald Trump and how dangerous a situation we're in?
We are in a very dangerous place, Ed, as I see it. And you and I have been talking about this ever since Trump was reelected, that he vowed to be a dictator from day one, and he has kept that promise. He's on the road to not just being a dictator here in America, but he wants that dictatorial type of power to be spread all around the world. And he wants to be a world leader. And that's exactly how global dictatorships start. We always talk about the Third Reich and how that got started with the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler. But there are many others along the way that Hitler traced his beginnings from. He liked Mussolini, and Mussolini really liked Napoleon. And so we could keep going back and talk about people who liked others and people who vowed to be dictators and what they wanted to do with that. All of this prompted me to go back and pull a book off the shelf that I hadn't read in years. It's called The Second Civil War, and it's by Ron Brownstein. And in this book, he talks about how civil wars get started and how people are in a state of denial as the Civil War manifests itself. And then when they really come to the realization that, yes, we are in a civil war, it's too late for conventional reactions. What are you going to do? Too late to go to the poll and vote the dictator out. That don't work. Too late to really go down and demonstrate, as we will get to things when we talk about what's going on in Los Angeles right now. It gets to a point that the dictators have all power, and the power that you have, the de jure power that you had in some piece of paper called the Constitution or the laws or the statute, they don't matter, because all that matters under dictatorship is what comes out of the muzzle or the barrel of the gun. And if they have all of that, from the Justice Department to the military to the National Guard, which we will talk about shortly, to local police when they are bribing, and I use the word knowingly, they're bribing local officials like the mayor of New York to support ICE, or bad things will happen to him. When they're going after law firms and saying, if you support things that I don't support, you won't get any business from the government. When they're going after educational institutions and saying, if you don't do what I say or enact my policies, you won't get any federal grants or any money, or I will make sure that people who come to your institutions, normally who come to your institutions, won't be able to pass the immigration test. That's a road to dictatorship. And this is going to be a road, Ed, that many people won't know they're on this road until it's too late. And I think right now it's too late for most people, because most people are still listening to CNN and MSNBC, trying to get mad about what the talking heads are telling them to get mad about. And then the talking heads are trying to convince them to go down and call their senators and their representatives and make sure you're registered for voting. And hey, it's too late for that. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be the one to tell you it's too late for that.
Yeah, it is too late for that, Val. And you mentioned L.A. and what's going on out there. Let's look at a clip. It's the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, talking about how Trump is trying to bully his way through L.A.
Rubber bullets. Governor Gavin Newsom slamming Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard, which Newsom did not request, warning the move is purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate tensions. The White House defending the president's action, saying it will address the lawlessness that has been allowed to fester.
We're going to continue doing our job. We're going to push back on these people.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth even threatening to send in active duty military, posting online, if violence continues, active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They are on high alert. In a phone call with our Los Angeles station KABC, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass refuting the notion that the city needs the National Guard's assistance.
I do not believe that that is called for, because I am confident that LAPD and other law enforcement agencies like the sheriffs can handle things in Los Angeles.
So, Val, the jump off point here is that in LA, the Department of Homeland Security and their thugs, I mean, that really they're brown shirts, SS. I mean, the equivalent, right? They've been going in and raiding schools. I heard that they went to a elementary school graduation and started picking up people. They've been at the Home Depot, picking up people or whatever. I have sort of mixed feelings here because, one of the things that kept being said was that Hispanics were not supporting Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and people weren't doing enough from the Democratic side, yada yada yada. So hence Hispanics were more inclined this time to support the Republicans. But we kept saying that there's a distinct possibility that they're going to start rounding y'all up. This is more a rhetorical question. I get up in the morning. Well, at this point, I'm not that worried about them rounding me up, at least not for right now, until they hear this show. They might change their mind. But how do those people that are being rounded up now, and some of them who have supported Donald Trump in these recent elections, particularly Hispanic people who supported Donald Trump, what are we supposed to say, or do we? I don't want to say we sit this out, because that old poem that says I watched while they took the Jews away and I didn't do anything and whatever, and then they come to take me, and who's going to look out for me? But how do you square us? And I do mean black folks, because we colored. How do we square all that support that was coming from Cuban Americans and some Mexican American folks and Argentinians or whatever who were here, how do we, be involved and be concerned, but at the same time, kind of stay out the way so we don't get caught up in this, or do we?
Yeah, you've got to know who to support. Now, what we're talking about here, what you're alluding to very clearly, Ed, is how do we support our brethren? And brethren, we're talking about brown people. We're talking about people having the right to choose their sexual orientation. We're talking about all people who are marginalized and depressed, because that's the background that we come from. And those are the people that we still work very hard to support. So we got to be there for them. And so when I look at what's going on in Los Angeles right now, there are a lot of people out there who can trace their lineage back 4 or 5 generations, and they are of African American or European American descent. So it's not likely that they are the ones that's targeted by ICE, but yet and still they're out on the front line trying to help their brown brothers that are being targeted by ICE to get out. So you've got to continue doing that, because one of the time-tested strategies of any type of dictator or tyrant is to divide and conquer. So we can't let them have that as an advantage of what they're trying to do. So we got to be there for them. It's no question about that. Having said that, we've got to be real careful that we are truthful in assessing where we are with this. And as I said earlier, don't fool ourselves or don't fool our brethren by talking about calling your congressman and the like, because the first thing that the call screener is going to want to know, are you a donor? Yeah. Because if you're not a donor, you don't even get put in the queue to wait on your turn. So you're not going to talk to a congressman about anything. If all you have is a vote, you're in a long, long line behind a lot of people that give money and don't even, the candidate doesn't care if they vote or not, as long as they're writing checks worth 6 and 7 figures. It don't care. And all you have is one vote. And they can do things, especially as it relates to the lower house of Congress, that make your vote irrelevant anyway. It's called gerrymandering. So they don't even care about that. You got to understand where we are, folks. You are in the initial process, and you are on the inside of the sausage making machine. You're seeing sausage being made from the inside, and you're not even aware that it's being made, because you're still on the outside talking about the price of sausages.
Well, Val, I could see that in my head when you were talking about the whole notion of a sausage being made. You don't want to see how it's actually made. You don't want to eat it after you see how it's made. I want to remind y'all, y'all are listening to or either viewing the New Deal with Val Atkinson and Ed Clark. We got a lot of new tools here. The show looks a little bit different. We're in a new studio downtown Raleigh, Fayetteville Street. Val is still in lovely Holly Springs, North Carolina, where he normally joins us from. I'm gonna get him in the studio now, because I think I'd love to have him at the table, and we're gonna have other people at the table. So we'll give you a tour of the studio at some point in the coming week or so, and so you can see what we're doing here. In the meantime, Val, before we take a break, I think it should go without saying that we anticipated that there would be some sort of conflagration between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The personalities were just too big. The egos were too big. And then Elon Musk let the cat out of the bag. He said, hey, I made it so Donald Trump could be president, right? He said it. He also said that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. He also said that Donald Trump's a horrible person, that the big, beautiful bill is not big. It is big, but it's not beautiful, that it's going to blow the debt and deficit up. So before we take a break, real quick, just tell me, What was your over under on when they were going to fall apart? Because everybody knew it was going to happen. Did you think it was going to happen this soon?
I didn't, Ed, to be frankly honest with you. I thought their little bromance would go on just a little bit longer than it has. But when you have two A-type personalities at the top of their game, that neither feels that anybody anywhere can tell them anything about what to do. And you get them in the same time and space. It's inevitable that a type of breakup is going to happen. And so I'm not surprised that it happened. I'm not surprised that it continued, but it's something that should be taken away by the average viewer, the average voter, is that, watch who you put in office, watch who they surround themselves by, and make good decisions if you care about how you are governed and that sort of thing. I mean, where we stand right now, Ed, and I know this is not your question, but where we stand right now, the sad truth is that if we had an election tomorrow, some people might be surprised, I'm not among them, that Donald Trump may win again.
Yeah.
After all that he's done. And now you got to, at some point the camera at the American people and ask them the question, who are you? Who really are you? And what do you want? And I hope we'll have time somewhere before the end of the show to get to that answer to that question, Ed. Who are we as a nation going forward?
Yeah, I hear some music in my ear. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about who we are. And one of the places we're going to start is with this big, beautiful bill in the budget and what the Senate's going to do with it, because it does tell us who we are. The things they're willing to cut in the tax breaks they're willing to give, it says something about how we believe in capitalism over everything else. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
It's like we just arrived.
I'm here today because of Tanya's relentless efforts in trying to get me healed. When I came back from the war, I became a homeless veteran. I was barely hanging on by a thread. The one thing that was constant for me was music. Music led me to Tanya. Normally with a veteran, we think we can solve everything. The truth of the matter is we cannot.
I just knew that something was different, something was off. I let him know that he wasn't alone. There are people that loved him.
And says, Michael, I know you've got a plan to take your life today, but if you give me just 5 more minutes to love you.
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, honey, 5 more minutes to love.
Michael has actually taught me what it looks like to accept help.
So what's in this big, beautiful bill? Well, for one thing, big cuts to healthcare for millions of Americans. It goes right after Medicaid. It would slash Medicaid by hundreds of billions of dollars. What that means is over 10 million Americans will lose their health care if this big, beautiful bill becomes law. Now, I guess they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That doesn't look very beautiful to me, that millions of Americans are going to lose their access to care. Now, you might say, well, I'm not on Medicaid. Why should I be concerned about it? Well, number one, you should be concerned for your neighbor who is on Medicaid. But even if you're not, that hospital down the street depends on Medicaid. And if that hospital can't get Medicaid funding, it just may close its doors. It may close completely, or it may close its labor and delivery. A lot of hospitals are shutting down their labor and delivery, or they might shut down their emergency rooms. So that Medicaid funding is essential to healthcare overall for all of us.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. Val Atkinson is here. It's Sunday, June 8th. We're in summertime, Val.
Yes.
Juneteenth is coming up. I'm really interested to see how the Trump administration is going to deal with Juneteenth. They haven't said a whole lot, but they've said a lot about a lot of stuff. Val, and where we left off was the big beautiful bill, so called, passed by the House, and we talked about Elon Musk right before we left for the break, and we said Elon Musk said that it's going to blow the debt and deficit to pieces. Donald Trump already in his first term added more to the debt and deficit than any other president in the history of all presidents combined. Now he's wanting to do it again. And Speaker Johnson is in a, I think, untenable position of trying to support this thing when he has Rand Paul and Ron Johnson, of all people, over in the Senate saying, we ain't doing this. This ain't going to happen. We ain't doing it. And so the Senate is not likely to pass the bill. And now with Elon Musk saying what he said, it throws more fuel on the fire of, this not getting past the Senate. So here's the long way around to the real question is, what does a budget bill out of the Senate actually look like? I suspect that, there's still enough people who are afraid of Donald Trump on the Senate side that will try to force some of those draconian cuts to Medicaid and SNAP and TANF and those kind of things. But what's your prediction on what the bill might look like for coming out of the Senate?
I think it'll be a slightly smaller version of the one that came out of the House. I think the Senate will find ways to trim it down a little, as the Supreme Court language they like to use, Supreme Court. It'll be finely tailored when the Senate gets rid of it. And they'll save enough cuts to Medicaid, and they'll save enough cuts to some of the other social programs, and they'll promise not to harm Social Security or Medicare for those who are on it right now. And they'll do enough to satisfy some of the budgetary hawks in the House, that when it goes back over, the House will say, okay, we can deal with the changes that the Senate has made. But they'll get the bill passed. And it'll still be, to use one of your words, draconian to the American people who have to suffer these things. There may be opportunity to cut here or there, but there's not a lot of waste, abuse, and fraud in the government. There's a lot of waste, abuse, and fraud for people who don't like the government and don't like spending and don't like social programs, because they don't think it should be any at all. Mm-hmm. They think it should be like Switzerland used to be, just total 100% capitalism. The government has no purpose at all. And if you lose your job, you starve, and if you can't find a dollar or two to go to school, you become uneducated and you work for other people, you and your family, for the rest of your lives. That's pure capitalism, and that ain't what we want as a society. It's not good.
Yeah, you bring up the whole thing about waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, and supposedly DOGE. That's what they were supposed to be doing, which kind of led us to this point, right? There was all this talk when Trump came into office that somehow all that he had to do was unleash Elon Musk. He would make these cuts of trillions of dollars, and then he could do his big, beautiful bill because there would be money available to pay for it. On top of that, all he had to do was unleash the tariffs. And you remember he said he was going to have an external revenue service, which is the dumbest thing I ever heard. An external revenue service that would be collecting so much money from tariffs, but he's backed off on even the tariffs. So let's take those two things. Let's take DOGE first, and then I want to talk about tariffs. DOGE found no savings. As a matter of fact, the last stuff I was reading said it's likely to have cost more money than anything it saved. what it did is it unemployed a number of people who did important work for the citizens of the United States. And now those jobs are lost, right? There's nobody there to do those things. So they've actually had to go back and start hiring people, Val, because they don't know how to do stuff. I was going to say how to do shit, but they don't know how to do shit. And what they've done is broken a lot of agencies. So let's start there with the Doge stuff. Obviously, with Musk gone, there's still these Doge people in there. What do you think the net effect of Doge is going to be long term? Obviously, I think when the new administration comes, they'll just get rid of that department, right? Because it's made up, for one. But what do you think the net effect of the Doge is?
I don't think it will be positive. I talk about it from the new administration coming in's perspective. If it is a Democrat type of administration that comes in to replace the Trump administration, Democrats are not likely to do anything to reverse any of the harm and damage that Doge has done. All they'll do is vow not to do the same thing that Doge has done. They'll stop the bleeding, but they won't go and try to reverse any of the problems that the bleeding has signaled that is wrong. And I think that's what's going to be needed. These people are going to have to be rehired, the people that lost their jobs. Sections and portions of agencies are going to have to be refunded that had money taken away from them. And things are going to have to be put in reverse. To go back to January the 19th of 2021, that's the day before Donald Trump became the 47th president of the United States. You need to go back to that time frame and then start building properly. And I don't know if the new administration, past history has told me that Democrat administration don't have the kahunas, they don't have the nerve to go in and undo anything that Republicans have done. They avow to you that they won't do the same thing. But I'm not so confident that anything will come to pass from a new replacement administration.
Yeah. So then the next part of this, Val, is the tariff part, right? Which caused the market to plummet. It ruined people's 401ks. I can raise my hand and attest to you that there were some bad days there, and it's not been a full recovery. You never fully recover, even if the market goes back up, right? You never fully recover right away. Some people lost stuff because they pulled stuff out and they didn't leave it into the sort of the stocks they already had, so it come back up. All those people who lost money on the scam that Trump was running with the meme coins and all that other stuff. You just go down the list. So tariffs is just another piece of that. So on the tariff side, Val, he completely collapsed and capitulated. And the whole taco thing, Trump always caves in, has really stuck because he has caved. So before I ask you another question about it, here's the whole, when a reporter asked him about the taco phrase.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country. And because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
Val. Donald Trump does always cave, right? And so talk to me about what was the whole purpose of this tariff bullshit. It did nothing, meant nothing. It just ruined a lot of lives, and now we find ourselves in another situation where countries are laughing at us again because Donald Trump doesn't know how world economy works.
You hit it. The last sentence right there. Donald Trump has a lot of people fooled. He knows far less than he has sold the American people and the rest of the world that he really understands and knows about how economics really run. He doesn't understand it. He's used to bluffing his way through things. He's used to talking about a deal, giving somebody something they want, getting something from a third negotiator in the whole process, and then withholding that from the primary person he's negotiating with. He don't know anything about the economy. He's a con artist. He's a bullshitter. And he's getting away with it in spades. So he thought, to answer your question, Ed, he thought that he would throw out all of these tariffs and talk about 120%, 145% tariffs on items. And he would get other countries begging, hey, stop the tariffs, and we'll move our plant from our country, our country to yours. And we will start buying your products that you make. And he really thought that was going to happen. And he could get on his podium and say, see, we got these crazy people to stop ruining and killing America and start acting right. And now they're doing the right thing. And the other countries said, no, we ain't going to play your game, Donald. You know, you want to put tariffs on us, we'll put them on you.
Yeah.
And we understand how the world economy works. And you're in no position that you're not in the position that you think you are to dictate to the rest of the world how this thing is going to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing that I think I want people to realize, you've been around the world in different countries. I have too. There are 8 billion people in the world now. China could literally not sell a thing to the United States and be just fine. They would just have to reorder their markets, right? I was just recently in Africa. People know I was in Tanzania and East Africa. And one of the things that I realized, I was at the port of Dar es Salaam and I saw these ships coming in from China. And then not only did I see the ships come in, I saw trucks pull up. And the trucks just weren't going to Tanzania. They were going to Kenya. They were going to Mozambique. They were going to Democratic Republic of Congo. They were going to Zambia. They were going to Rwanda. They were going to Burundi. They were going, in some cases, getting stuff on planes and flying to South Africa and flying to Ghana with Chinese stuff, the same Chinese stuff that you can buy off of Amazon or Temu or at Walmart here, right, Val? And so there's these other markets, and they're not even secondary markets. You know, they used to call them secondary markets because the real market was in the United States, right? The primary people that buy stuff. But people had disposable income. I was in the mall in Dar es Salaam at the Samsung store. The same Samsung phone, the same Samsung TV, the same Samsung laptop was available there, but at a very discounted price compared to what you can buy it in America. It was like over half the price less in those markets. And the Chinese are willing to sell there because they don't have to deal with the tariff nonsense. So again, before we run out of time in this segment, I need for you to tell me where in the world we sit now. We talk often about us only being 4% of the world's population here in America. And if we further isolate ourselves because Donald Trump just issued a travel ban again. And if you look at the countries he's issued the travel bans against, Val, I've never heard any of those countries pose a problem to the United States. But one thing that's clear is they all colored people. So talk to me real quick about how the very people that now will become customers of China and are getting support from China are likely to be the folks that he tries to keep from getting in. What politics is he playing here other than race politics? The thing that they always accuse us of doing.
This is linchpin politics, Ed. This is down at the core nucleus of everything that Trump is about, stands for, stood for during election time and everything. And it's the fear of Americans that their country, their culture, their way of life is about to be taken over by others. And by others, they mean people who don't look like them, who are not European, who don't practice the same European culture and customs that they do. They are afraid to death of this because, as you said, we only comprise about 4.6% of the world's population. So they are afraid that the other 95%, this is not 45 or 55%, 95% of the world may stop sucking up to the 4%. They are afraid to death of that. So now they go through all of these measures, tariffs, immigration policies, deportation, getting rid of DEI, getting rid of affirmative action, holding out the refuge flag to Afrikaners in South Africa that claim that they've been denied things that their ancestors took from the indigenous people fair and square. You know, they stole it fair and square. And now they want it back, and they are being hurt. They are being injured. So Donald Trump holds out a leaf, an olive branch, to say, you can come to the great United States of America and we will protect you against all of these people of color who are trying to deny you your rightful advantage of being white. You know, so that's what this whole thing is about. So when I see all of these people on the list that are being barred from coming into the United States, and they are from countries that the majority of people look like you and I, Ed, I am the last one that's surprised.
Yeah.
Because that's the linchpin of this whole thing, is that these people are afraid that they are losing their way of life.
Yeah.
This is the same thing that started the Civil War in America back in 1861. People thought they were going to lose their way of life, so they were willing to go to war. And it's coming back on us again. America is afraid she's going to lose her way of life, so she's ready to do anything. Get rid of democracy, put on tariffs, deport people, deny people from coming in, whatever it takes. They are afraid of losing their way of life.
And that's the bottom line. You know what, Val, that's a good place for us to take a break. We'll come back, and on the other side, we're going to come back to the United States and talk about some domestic stuff about it's hurricane season. And the new FEMA administrator said he didn't even realize there was a such thing as hurricane season. Go figure, Val. Anyway, here's some music in my ear. When we come back, we'll talk about hurricane season and some other stuff before we get out of here. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff.
Escúchame, en esta casa los hombres no lloran.
You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Tonight, we're looking into a story getting a lot of buzz this week. It claims the head of FEMA said he wasn't aware the United States has a hurricane season. It's true. Several sources told Reuters that acting FEMA chief David Richardson made the remark during a daily briefing Monday. It was reportedly not clear to staff whether he meant it literally or was joking. The Department of Homeland Security said Richardson was joking. In a statement, a spokesperson said, despite mean-spirited attempts to falsely frame a joke as policy, there is no uncertainty about what FEMA will be doing this hurricane season. Richardson, a former Marine Corps officer and martial arts instructor, has led FEMA since early May.
And welcome back to the third and final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. And we're in the new look deal, the new deal. As FDR called it, the New Deal, right? We're so happy to be back on the air in your podcast feed. So make sure you tell people about us. We got some exciting things coming up. We got a new studio downtown Raleigh, so we hope to have people here in the studio. Like I said, I'm gonna drag Val Atkinson down here and put him at the table, and we're gonna try to invite as many people into the studio as possible to try to get a good conversation going about a lot of different things. And Val, when we left, we were talking about the, things that are going on domestically that we need to talk about. One of the things that, I've been really concerned about is, obviously the budget's coming up and all that kind of stuff, but there's a real impact of when you say, for example, I don't believe in FEMA. I think FEMA should be completely shut down. And you don't know how it runs. So you appoint somebody to be the FEMA director who says, I didn't know there was a hurricane season. Whether he was saying it in jest or not, particularly if he was saying it in jest, it's not funny when you're in a briefing with everybody in FEMA on hurricane season to say you didn't even know it was there. The real net effect, and people know this, I used to work at FEMA. I used to be a spokesperson for FEMA. I used to be the guy that stand up there with the FEMA jacket with the governor and do press conferences and that kind of thing, or be on TV and try to encourage people to register for FEMA. They've also, Val, gotten rid of AmeriCorps within FEMA, which people don't realize how big an impact that's going to be. Those people that used to go door to door and have you sign up, because if your house is gone, how else you going to sign up? You ain't got no internet service. So there used to be young kids who would give a couple years of service in exchange to forgive some loans. They would walk around with iPads and sign people up for FEMA, because how are they going to call the toll-free number? They ain't got their cell phone. So, Val, that's some real rubber hits the road kind of shit, right? Is that, you got these people who are eliminating whole departments because they say they don't believe in them. They don't think they do anything. And in the case of FEMA, it really does stuff. And I just saw the other day the National Weather Service say that there's probably going to be more named storms this year than normal. So you don't have to speak directly about FEMA, because we also know they got rid of people at other departments. But what's the net effect of a FEMA on a state like North Carolina if all the burden is put back on them? But also think about Mississippi and Alabama and all those places that get hit all the time, Louisiana, and they all voted for Donald Trump. So what happens now, Val?
Well, what happens is they are in a real bad place that they don't have the resources to get out of. Those states that you mentioned are in what we call Hurricane Alley. In North Carolina, that's number one target on the East Coast to get hit by the hurricanes. One of the reasons our hockey team here in the state of North Carolina got nicknamed the Hurricanes, because that's what we have. A lot of hurricanes. But you take a look at Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they get their hurricanes coming up the Gulf Coast. Not the Gulf of America, but the Gulf Coast, the Mexican Gulf. I thought that was a little joke, but anyway.
Good one. Good one.
These states are going to have problems. They don't have money within their budget to handle things that FEMA can readily do with the snap of a finger. FEMA brings the whole resources of the federal government into one particular state to help that state out that the state itself could never do. When you're talking about life-threatening natural events. And when I think of life-threatening natural events, the first thing come to my mind is Katrina. That was tough. And not to mention all of the named storms that came about on the East Coast, Sandy, Hazel, you can go right down the line of hurricanes that have hit, that the states that were hit would not have been able to recover had it not been for FEMA. And I don't know what some of the budgetary folks in the Trump administration think is going to happen to these states. They won't be able to recover. And that's going to affect the economy of that entire state and eventually will affect the economy of the nation. It's just nonsensical. I don't know who's advising these people to come up with these kinds of decisions, other than the fact they are trying to clear the path. And I know you're going to get to this later. Clear the paths so that the next round of tax cuts for the billionaires won't blow the deficit up so big. And that was the reason for DOGE in the first place.
Yeah. But
go through there and clean things out so that when we give you your tax cut, it won't blow the deficit up bigger than what it already is.
Well, that ain't going to work. I can tell you that because one is you already got to service the debt that you already got, right? So there's no amount of cutting to a FEMA or cutting some jobs at Social Security. Here's a real impact, Val. That happened to me last week. I go to the IRS website and I go in to try to find the status of my refund. It was all of a sudden gone. So I go online and try to figure out what's going on. So I called the IRS and I waited for 2 hours on hold before I got to somebody. And then the lady promptly says, I can't help you. You got to go into an office. And so I said, well, stay on the phone with me. Let me go through trying to get an appointment. Guess when the next available appointment in Raleigh was, Val? Just take a wild guess.
2 days later.
2 years later. You got the two part right. It said it was 2 years before the next available appointment. So I said, hold on. I said, that ain't going to work. I need to take care of this now. So she said, well, let me try. So she goes in and she was able to schedule me an appointment for 2 days later. So it was a Friday. I was able to go Monday morning. When I show up Monday morning, they act like they were surprised to see me, that anybody could get an appointment. There were 5 or 6 agents and nobody in there because you can't schedule an appointment. They were like, how did you get an appointment? I said, well, I talked to this lady. She scheduled it for me. Long and short of it is that the woman told me that my tax return was removed from the system because I hadn't responded to a notice. And I said, when did they start doing that? She said, well, it's a new policy. And I said, well, can you show me the notice that was supposed to be sent to me? So she looks at the system and she goes, interesting. And I said, so what's so interesting about that? She says, well, I don't see the notice. So had I had to go through the process, Val, I would have been frustrated in trying to get an appointment, number one. Number two, the notice that supposedly triggered them removing my return from the system didn't exist. It was non-existent. And so who do you talk to when I waited on hold for 2 hours and the woman told me she wasn't the right person to talk to? But she just went ahead and decided to help me get an appointment because when I told her it was 2 years. So that's sort of rubber hits the road kind of stuff, Val. And so governors around the country, back to the FEMA thing for just a second, but all government services they've removed those offices from states around the country, and governors can't do anything about those federal services like VA and like Social Security and like IRS that have been removed, right? And they're certainly going to have more money that states have to come up for stuff like FEMA. But in states like North Carolina, where Republicans have been in control, they've hurt things like DMV. So I got a clip I want to show about North Carolina and the weight that people have to do for the DMV. And Governor Josh Stein here in North Carolina has appointed a new DMV director to try to get a hold of some of this.
Because you're the commissioner?
Absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the job if I didn't believe that I could make a serious impact.
Tyne is well aware of the serious criticism the DMV faces over service delays and experienced it firsthand.
And my son had his learners expire because he wasn't able to get into an appointment.
And this is at 7 in the morning.
During our interview, I showed him this video taken 2 days ago at a DMV in Clayton, showing dozens of people lined up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday trying to get in.
What are your initial thoughts?
Well, it's heartbreaking, to tell you the truth.
If admitting is the first step in solving a problem,
it is as broken as everybody thinks it is.
Tyne is well on his way to a solution. A month into the role, the DMV has revamped its website, restructured employee pay, purchased new uniforms for employees, and bottled water to hydrate people waiting outside, and continued to court vendors to overhaul the outdated tech the DMV runs.
So, Val, you see that there's lines out the door at DMV in North Carolina. You got to have this real ID. You got to just have an ID or driver's license or whatever. And the Republicans have steadily closed offices or not provided funding to hire new DMV people. So the governor, working with the new DMV commissioner here in North Carolina, decides to open on Saturday to try to alleviate some of this, which is a good idea because people work during the week. But think about places like Nebraska, in Alabama, in Mississippi, where you don't have a Josh Stein as governor, right, to try to go around some of this stuff that Republican legislatures have been able to do because they've gerrymandered their way into power. Here's, again, the long way to the question is, what about people in Alabama, Mississippi, and all those places that don't have a Josh Stein as governor? What's going to happen to them, and when will they finally go, oh, we've gone too far. The dog's caught the car. I think it'll be when average white folks start saying, I had Medicaid and now I don't have it, and grandma's sick or whatever, right? I can't get my medicine. Where do you think the breaking point's going to be in those states that supported Trump but don't have a Governor Josh Stein or a Governor Beshear in Kentucky to try to beat back some of this stuff that they do?
I don't know where or when it's going to be attempted, Ed, but I don't think it will be successful because the Supreme Court and the Congress have given too much leeway, too much power to the executive branch, and General Donald Trump in particular, that it's too late to control him at this particular point. So states can say, okay, I've had enough, and we voted for you, and now we are losing all of our benefits and our people are suffering. They can do that or say that all they want, but because you have control of the executive branch of government, what they want to do, they won't be able to do. Because you can bring out the National Guard, you can stop funding, you can do so many things from the executive branch, you can declare martial law. I mean, there's so many things you can do that states and people living in those states, I think the time has almost passed already, Ed, to do anything about somebody wanting to take dictatorial control over the United States of America. You've given away the farm already, and now you want to close the barn door. You've given away the whole farm. It's too late.
Yeah, and we could spend another whole hour talking about the Supreme Court and all the shenanigans there. Judge Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Elena Kagan excoriated the court just on Friday because of some of the rulings that are coming out. And in this case, it wasn't even a ruling. They sent the case back to the appeals court that I think the Supreme Court should have made a decision on. They should have heard the case. I mean, I don't know if you heard, Val, the oral arguments in the case over birthright citizenship. I got some real concerns. Clarence Thomas clearly has lost his mind. He is the most vile person I think I can think of. I don't know why he hates himself so bad that he's willing to play Uncle Ruckus every day in the court. But he and Alito are just horrible. But I think Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, they know they're doing wrong. But a lot of times, instead of ruling against Donald Trump outright, they're sending stuff back to the court, which is dragging stuff out because they know that if it goes back to the lower court, you may be 6 or 9 months down the road, and then they have to come and decide if they're going to hear the case again. They could just keep kicking the can down the road. So at some point, I do want to get some Supreme Court experts on here to talk about what happens in those cases and what do we do in terms of how to right these wrongs, because this all goes back to that day Mitch McConnell stood on the lawn, Val, when he said that he was not going to let Obama's nominee for Supreme Court go through, Merrick Garland. And,
Right.
and he said, oh, well, it's too close to the election. And then they turn right around and do the same thing 3 times with Donald Trump and allowed, because he knew the control of the courts was important. One of the things that Joe Biden was able to do, and he was successful at doing, was appointing brown and black people to the appeals court. And he appointed a lot of them because there were a lot of vacancies and they took advantage of that. Trump is starting to appoint people, but there aren't as many vacancies available. So maybe he won't be able to make such a mess out of it, but I'm not 100% sure, Val. But anyway, we've squandered everybody's time this morning, but we're glad you took the time to come and join us. We're, again, in our new setup here. That's Val Agassiz. I'm Ed Clark. We do the deal. We encourage you to ask people to subscribe. So whatever platform you use, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. We're on all those platforms. And then if you have ideas for shows, please ed@thedealwithedclark.com, ed@thedealwithedclark.com. Just send me an email, and then we'll try to talk about those things. If you don't like what we're doing, keep it to yourself. And no, if you don't, tell us. I mean, I really want to know, but if you do like what we're doing and the things we're trying to do, and like I said, we have a much more capabilities. As you can see, Val's remote. We're able to bring him in. We're going to be able to bring people in from remote. We're going to have people in the studio and all those kind of things. Val, for people who've been with us a long time, I always ask you before we leave, anything you got to tell us for this week, anything we need to know, we need to be looking for?
Well, the thing that I want people to know right now is that I'm still working on a piece called The Octogenarian. And I'm doing that out of my reverence to my good friend, Ed Clark, who will soon be an octogenarian in many years to come. But it's going to be a piece that is like a blog. It's like a op-ed column, and it'll be by and for octogenarians, people who are soon to be octogenarians, and lastly, for those like Ed who want to be an octogenarian one day. So it's for everybody.
And I certainly want to get to that point. I got 20 to go. But so I just hit the 60 mark. So, Val, and I'm very thankful that I've been able to make it. And I want people, this is serious. I mean, Val is the most active octogenarian I know. I mean, when people kept trying to criticize Joe Biden because he was already 80 or whatever, you have to remember your birthday is very close to Joe Biden's birthday.
10 days.
10 days apart. And because of your age does not mean you're not capable, you're not thinking, and can't do. And I know there have been a lot of Joe Biden books out of Val, and we didn't even talk about those. I'm not even sure I won't even bother with talking about those. We might down the road. But the fact is, the man has a very serious cancer. And while he was in office, he didn't do anything to jeopardize the health and safety of the people of America. I think that's what's important. Donald Trump is knocking on the door of being octogenarian. He's not that far off, and people have given him a complete pass. I don't get it, Val, but I guess it's not for us to know. Anyway, I hear some music in my ear. That means we got to go. Let's do this again. So join us again next time for another edition of The Deal. Like I always tell you to do, go out and do something good for somebody today, and I really do mean that. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.